Okay, guys. Well, it is 12:30 on the nose, and I'm going to get us started here so we don't get delayed too far into the afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for our first in this series of our members' informational meetings. And my name is Amy Luschke. I am the Director of Member Services here at Minnesota DHIA. Happy to welcome you in. I will turn it over to Dave Scapanski. And Dave is a dairy producer in Sauk Rapids, Minnesota. He's also president of Minnesota DHIA, the board, and also the treasurer of National DHIA. Thanks, and go ahead, Dave.
Yes.
Okay.
Go to the next one. So I'll start out with DHA herds in the United States. I guess 2022, we got 11,175. DHA cows on test in 2022 is a little over 4 million. And average herd size now is 270 cows per herd. Next slide. So I have a few maps here, just I guess telling you where the cows are at and how the DHA system looks like. So each dot is 2,000 cows. And this first map is on the DHA field service affiliates. So we have a total of 1,683 technicians, 25 affiliates. Next slide. And the meter calibration and service, meter centers, I guess we have 37 centers all over, 78 technicians, 68,000 portable meters. And the labs, quite a few labs, 42 laboratories, and it's 5.81 million samples monthly they go through. It's a lot of samples. Next slide. So here's where the processing centers are. There's 4 of them. They supply data for management decisions and benchmarking. They interface with a lot of on-farm management software. In Minnesota, we use all 4. And our main one is DRMS in Raleigh, which is over towards the East Coast. That's all I got right there. So here's data should have purpose, trait definitions, standards or guidelines, and quality validation. Next slide. So I got about 3 projects we're working on through national, and this one is what we call the IG. So we have a lot of acronyms for everything. So this is the international group to develop a new milk sampler. So we established a company, or establishing, for collaborative development of the next generation sampler for offering more automation. So we're in phase 1, which is pretty far along. It's to develop the sampler. The group thought the sampler was the first thing we should get, because that's what we need to keep our labs running. And it's probably more of a need in the European countries than us so far, because they are a lot of auto samplers there that are going to sunset or hard to get parts for, I guess. Then the phase 2 will be a combination with the sampler and a milk yield device, which is really thought about how to make the 2 work together. So we're in that phase 2. Okay, next slide. So the advantages and goals will be to sample smaller, lighter, then it'll sample directly into a lab vial. That'll fit the low-line parlors where mechanic or creepers are used in these parlors. I never knew they were doing that, but it's got to be a lot of work creeping around all over to get samples. So this should be a smaller, I don't know how big, but it'll be a lot smaller the way I've seen prototypes already. Then a solution for sampling between test days. It'll open up for somatic cell if you want to do on fresh cows. Cows about to dry off. Extra keto tests on fresh cows. The in-between stuff like which we use on our farm, preg test. You can, don't have to have a time set up. You can just do it yourself and send them in, and fatty acids. And maybe there'll be more down the road. Next slide. So when this all started, there was 2 Dutch engineers started making a trip around the United States. And the first one they stopped at, it was our farm. And their names, Rudy and York is their names. I don't know the last name, but they were really 2 young engineers that really got into measuring. And so they're working on the project right now. They went to our farm, then 5 other ones in Minnesota, and then they went to Michigan. Then I think they went towards to the west, but I thought maybe if they got too complicated, they'd probably quit, but they're still with us. Next slide. So the group is led by a technical coordinator, which is Uffe. He's from Denmark, and he's been around a long time in this business, and he's really got a passionate to get this project up and running. And then we got a business manager, Albert Reverink, and he's also from Denmark. So we laid this out. It's 1 vote per board member per country or region. And I think right now there's 5 to 6 countries involved in this. So we're going to finalize the participating countries in early 2024 and establish preliminary cash flow for first 6 months and implementing a 1 cent per cow per month funding call for a capital loan to the group in March, as discussed by the delegates in 2023 and approved by the National DHIA Board. So this must be a sustainability slide. So you just get to use solar and wind. So here's another project, IDENT. It's the International Dairy Data Exchange Network. It's collaboration, cooperation, and standards. So it's meant to streamline data exchange between dairy herds, milk recording organizations, farm service providers, dairy equipment manufacturers, and on-farm software. So the motivation for this one is digitalized records exist on farm in many places in the world, and many national initiatives of hubs of data exchange failed. So the major milking equipment work globally. So for all parties involved, the use of standard interfaces and standard data transfer mechanism will significantly reduce current costs for transformation of data from different standards, implement ICAR data exchange standards, and the cost of redundant hubs, and the use of data that are available but clearly not used. So next slide. So it's a joint effort to build a network that enables effective data exchange, respecting data security and data access, along with data usage policies. So the companies that, and this has 7 countries involved in this, but we already got the major robotic outfits on board because everybody who develops something now has too many versions of their software. So this is trying to eliminate so that they work in the United States, overseas, or whatever. So we don't have so many. And I always say working together and trying to not spend because this all comes down to the farmer paying. He's the last point that they collect the money on. So we got to quit the redundance. And so I'm thinking this is a good way to do things together. So even we got software program Volvasync now, which works in the European countries and here. So they're working with this system. So, and hopefully in end of this year, next year, we'll have the processing centers involved in some kind of a phase here. So next slide. Here's another project, Kaisley Tags. They came to the board to ask if we'd help them get into the United States. They're a German-based company, and they must have been tried to come years ago, but you got to go a certain amount of loopholes. So next slide. So a lot of the reasoning is that if you don't know, the visual 840 tags will no longer be official tags in 24, and they may strain the production of Allflex, which is the largest probably selling tag outfit there is. So the USDA is looking for alternatives. So all official tags will have to be RFID. Next slide. So this Kaisley tags, they came to the board, and they're a family-owned company that has been around for 25 years, out of Germany. They asked if we would help them get through the USDA stuff. And they're actually moving through. I don't know how many rounds they got to go through, but they're working through it now. So this tag is made of high quality plastic, no recycled plastic, weather resistant, antibacterial, much lighter, more flexible, bends instead of breaking when caught on something. And they developed their own font for easy reading. Next slide. So the EU documents that they only have a 2.1 tag loss over 4 years. And tissue tags in competition for Allflex. And the same applicators used for all tags. It's sponsored by National DHIA and submitted to the USDA for approval as official tag. And it will be available through EarTag Central, probably as soon as USDA approves. And I'm going to say September, October, but heard that deadlines before, but that's what they told me. Then it's going to be the tag will be made over in their own factory. Then they'll send the plain tag to the United States. Then it'll be laser printed here. Do we have any pictures of any of the tag or anything? Anybody, or just one thing that they had a really nice tag that caught my eye is when you do tissue sampling, they have a RFID tag with a management tag all in one. And right away, when you punch that tag to do that with the RFID, you will get, if you have the tissue one, you will get that right into that sample. So the RFID tag will match that little sample, just like that. Okay, Amy's showing him, but there you go. So I think it'll be a good, I mean, I've seen the tags. Some of us seen them probably in Minnesota already, but they have a nice tag, except they only get certain amount, so big. But when they get here with a tag, they're gonna ask what us producers would like to see on some of their tags. But so we'll see what happens. But I think it's a good tag. It's lighter, flexible, Okay, next slide. Well, I think we're a couple slides off here. I seen that one. Okay, so I got action for the future. DHA program is collaborating, sharing open, and communicating. Then down below, sustainable. So I think, and I see it, that more people in the system are working together, sharing, because I think there's only so many cows or whatever we can gather information on, or work. We can't all, I don't know, I could go back to this pie shaped. Hopefully we all can make a living out of it. And we hope the farmer doesn't get his pie too small. We need to make money at this, but okay, next slide. So here data needs to be expanding. Why not use DHA data? So there's a lot of talk about sustainability, but methane, carbon credits, sustainability, processing requirements, animal care and health, and farm. So I happened to have a conversation with the field man, and we have an inspection coming up. I think we could actually have state people coming in today or federal, but I said, how far are we going to go with that sustainability? And he says, well, there's more talk. And then we got talking about components, which is, he said, you farmers with the components are high, it just makes our cheese yield way more. So I said, do you call that sustainability? He didn't know. I said, yeah, why would you? Because you got more out of that 100 pounds of milk. So I did a little thing about, I think we need to tell our own story. So I was watching TV, and you know how the commercials are, they're longer than the program. So it's just sketching down things that you already do on your farm. And there's a lot of things that we do over the years that I think the people that write up like the farm program or the processing or the end user of the cheese or whatever, they don't really think about that, what we're already doing. So if you talk about your lighting on your farm, almost every fan you buy nowadays can be variable speed, hooked up on a timer. I mean, your crops are, I mean, they're telling you to plant cover crop, but you're planting probably hay, you got grasses growing, you split, applicate nitrogen. I have about 40 things I wrote down in about 10 minutes. And you just sit back, and I think if everybody did that, when somebody asks what you need or what we should be doing, you could almost say we're doing a lot of things. Because right now, Organic Valley, it's a big, they must have a lot of farms, because they're gonna, in the next 5 years, they want to enroll 500 farms in the program. And this is what they cut out the middleman for the carbon credits. So they think they're going to do it themselves. So they're installed close to 1,200 what they call regenerative agriculture practices. That's a lot of different practices for each farm. I don't know. I tried to find out what the 1,200 would be, but so that they can figure out how much carbon, which I don't know if we all know that, but I think we could use our records, our DHA system for a lot of things, because if you're getting cows bred back earlier, less time to eat, less manure to haul, even the beef breeds and sex semen saved, it did a lot. The genetics did a lot to things for this. It's just my opinion, but I think we can use our DHA system for more when these programs are being put out to do. So then there's another thing they're trying to develop, which is a sustainability for the whole world and the milk part for exports, because we all export and every country sort of exports, so we have the same standards instead of everybody having their own standards. But so ICAR is working on this, which should hopefully it works to so everybody's on the same page. But sustainability, I think it's a hard one to come up with the real definition of it is. Next slide. I think that might be my last one. Okay, thinking about the future. So I was just at a meeting not too long ago. So what's the trend of population growth? Some people say we're going to grow a lot, but you think about it, some countries will, but a lot of countries are sort of going backwards now because there's not that many kids being born like there used to be. I think you need up to a 2 to go forward, but if you're below 1 point something, you go sort of backwards. So it's just an interesting observation. And then drones seem getting to be a hotter topic from scouting fields to spraying, but back in my mind, why can't we go pick up samples somewhere and deliver them to Mark? Like way out in the Northeast area or something. Them 3 farmers that are up there by Evelyn, these drones are not the little simple drone that your kids play, but there's some of them I've seen are pretty good size now. So some idea down the road, maybe. That's all I got about stretching out that far in the future. So that's pretty much my national. Then I started into the Minnesota thing. So here we go with Minnesota statistics. So as of February, the rolling herd as of February 1st, the milk is at 25,654. It's slightly lower than the all-time high of 25,708 in October of 23. But the butterfat test for 365 days is 4.25%, 1,091 pounds. Both are at all-time high. Protein tests at 3.27%. That's 839 pounds of protein per rolling herd average. Both tied in October for all-time high. But if you add them 2 together, it's just about an 8th. 4.25, 3.27. And a lot of herds are doing that now. It's everybody asks what's doing it, but I think we got better at feeding, plus genetics pushed it on. So it's good for everybody because we're getting paid on the components nowadays. Next slide. And then January 24 was the lowest all-time with somatic cell with 185,906. I was going to say 186, but 185,906 is lower, so looking good. Next slide. And here's our districts. Let's see, we got 7 districts. I don't know. I can't really see how many cows, but we try to keep them even. We look at this every 5 years to see if we should even up. But I don't know where like I'm in that orange one, the Northeast, I got 25,000 cows probably, I think. I got quite a few herds, but most of them are down on the lower end. You get up way up there past Duluth, there's only, I'm going to say I know 3 herds up there, but they're really spaced apart. I think you can almost say that when you go to the northwest, it's pretty sparse in the top part, but as you work your way down, there's more herds. But yeah, that's how that lays out. And then I think the next slide will say who's up, but so the director opening is in the Southeast, South Central, and the Metro. And then the meeting will be March 26th in Rogers. I don't know if you want to go back to the map or just leave it be. So they would be, if you can see below Stearns, M3 shifting to the Southeast would be the ones that are open, the people that are there. So it'll be Lenny Haynes Jr., Holly Thompson, and Pete Kapsner. But it will take nominations at the end of this meeting. Okay, next one. So we had a nice audit. Lizette does a really nice job. She's our controller. But our current ratio is 9.2 to 1, which is excellent. Our auditor says if we have like 2 to 1, we'd be good, but we have a 9.2, so everything's good. So if anybody wants an audit, we'll email a copy to you, to any member we'll email if you call the office. Okay, next slide. So the operation update. So lab and field services increased due to increased costs. So workers' comp the premiums went up plus 64%. Liability insurance, health insurance, earned sick and safe time rules. There's mileage, sample shipping, mail, report printer, and lab chemicals. Seems like everything we do went up, but I think we all know it on the farm too. And then hiring and training. Next slide. So center labs, over 30,000 milk samples are analyzed for fatty acids since January 1st of 2022. Over 13,000 manure samples analyzed in the past 14 months. 640,000 cows prig checked using milk samples when we started. And prig checks, milk samples really caught on. It maybe could catch on more, but it's really a good thing. Over 90,000 cows tested for yonis using the DHIA milk sample since 2006. Next slide. Oh, 2.2% positive for the past 4 years.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dave, for that.
You're welcome.
I'm going to stop sharing there. And the next speaker on our agenda is Pat Baier. Pat's going to talk with us about HerdHQ. Pat is the Business Development Director at DRMS, and he lives in Mount Horeb, Wisconsin. So remote working from there. Pat, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Amy. I'm here today to give a sneak preview of our newest management decision support tools. Time only allows for a quick product overview. To get more information, Greg Pallas has inserted our contact information into the chat box of this Zoom call. Feel free to copy that down and use it to contact us. So, our newest suite of management decision tools comes with the following. One of my favorites is no software or apps to install, Apple and Android compatible, available for all herds that process records through DRMS. Dart herds that upload with Dart Sync can see their most current data. And it's web-based, not a paper or static report. This means we've created products that are more timely and more interactive. In my recent travels of Minnesota and Wisconsin, I see that every small town now has a brew pub. Someone from the local economy brewing beer and serving great food to go with it. Each also has what they call their flagship beer, the one that forms a connection with all the other products and is the base of operations. I think Cow Compass is the flagship of HerdHQ products. It's the base of operations, and as you will see, it forms a connection to all other HerdHQ products. It's a great product to use cowside. You need more information to assist on with timely activities, treat, don't treat, or other such decisions. The data source is static data based on last test day, or again, if you're a DART sync herd, that last action. So what can we look up? We can look up cows, heifers, or bulls. We can look up by groups. We can use a cow's ear tag or barn name and official ID. We can find active and or archived cows. Excuse me. Additional data not found in DART is the sire and maternal grandsire's genetics. If you're using CDCB genomics, that's available. And if you're a Zoetis herd using their proprietary traits, we have a page on Cow Compass that'll link those traits that you can view them too. We all could use a product that allows us to save time and get right to the analysis portion of management. With Dairy Depot, we can analyze current performance by building customizable dashboard or dashboards. There's over 100 graphs and tables to choose from. They're grouped by management area. The data source again is last test day, or if you're a DART sync herd, a much more current activity. One of the things that's really nice about this is that you can drill down again to that Cow Compass or that base product on an individual cow where needed. Another nice part of this, if there's consultants on the call today, is the ability to copy graphs for presentations or reports that you can take out to the management team of any dairy. Want to know about health events, cows to dry, due to fresh, and other current events impacting your herd? Herd Highlight is great for you. You can analyze current performance with 19 activities to select from, drill down into specific health events or areas. An example of that would be how many mastitis events have we had in the last week? It allows the manager to summarize or to find all of that. Summaries can be created by day, week, month. Again, test day, DART sync. The drill down ability here, I have a little graphic on the side. Hopefully everyone can see that. In cow 60, 50, you could click on her and drill down to see more information about that cow so you can make a overall decision if you need to at that point in time. Milk, excuse me, Milk Metrics is a great tool to evaluate progress of our individual herd and key management areas and get a good fix on how we're doing compared to peer group herds. Summary of test day, grouped by management area. You can again compare to peer group of herds, and that's customizable. So you can kind of pick your peer group and use of quartile rankings to spot opportunities for improvement. You can also create a separate page of custom alerts and go to that page on a regular basis to minimize time of managing progress on your farm. Great way to quickly view and quickly get at what are things that need my immediate attention. Decisive Dry is a HerdHQ product that will give us the ability to guide dry cow treatment activity, measure economic outcomes of the decisions to treat or not treat dry cows for cows drying off from mastitis. The graphic demonstrates how the guide will work. If the overall herd health program qualifies, green graphic suggests the cow not needing treatment, and red earmarks cows that probably should be treated. Again, it's a simple, easy to use, time-saving guide. That's what we're creating here. All right, keeper beef, based on a prediction model that calculates a future economic value for each cow in the herd. Calculates economic values for breeding cow to either dairy, conventional, dairy sorted, or beef semen. Responsive to changes on a daily basis. something you just can't do with paper. Results downloaded into Dart or CSV files can be created for other software. It incorporates outcomes from the model in a decision support tool, shows the relative ranking of each cow in a herd, recommends first and second breeding choice, and a monetary value difference between those two. Keeper beef can be a real game changer. In the fast-moving world we live in the dairy industry today, a real game changer in guiding those important culling and breeding decisions to positively impact our herd on an economic basis. Where there is this much power in a new product, my personal idea is to suggest a bit more than the average training before just jumping in and using this tool. A great tool, just make sure you're trained on how to use it. Heifer Hub is a new online tool to predict future replacements, simulate different strategies, ensure enough replacements are available, maximize revenue from selling beef and dairy crosses, measure the impact of management changes. So basically what you can do because of this online tool is do a test drive of different scenarios. What if I improve a little bit in this area? What if I save more calves and have more heifers from that? So it's just allowing you to make those scenarios and find your best outcomes. So DRMS information is used to begin the measurement of this product, provides actual numbers based on your farm performance, and then you add some inputs. Heifer Hub is a great tool to use in conjunction with Keeper Beef. The difference is one helps decide how many animals to breed, to sex beef or conventional, and the other guides that decision on an individual cow basis. Here's a quick demo of what a screen looks like when you're using a smaller screen like a cell phone. You'll notice the plus and minus signs on this screen. So because of that smaller screen, clicking on these plus or minus signs allows us to expand or collapse each area. So you're saying to yourself, Pat, HerdHQ is an amazing new tool. Where do I go to find out more or sign up for the HQ suite of products? Just go to drms.org, sign in and look for the HQ icon. If you hover over that icon, you'll get a drop-down list of the available products. So what we're looking at here is the official release order of each product. I'm not going to read down through that to save us some time, but I am going to take a drink of water. So we've set up a 30-day trial program for each product. This no charge program allows you to receive training, which I think is important, and gives you time to practice with each tool before being billed for the value that they bring to your dairy farm. So with that, I want to thank you. I want to thank you to the audience for allowing me the time to talk to you about this. And a thanks to Minnesota DHIA for the opportunity to give this quick preview of the HQ products. If you've not checked the chat box, here's how to reach DRMS to sign up for one or more of these easy to use and time-saving management products. You can also use the information to contact us to receive training on each HerdHQ product or any of the other services we provide. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to leave that up for just a second, Amy, to make sure everybody's got a chance.
Perfect.
And then I'll drop and share back to you.
Well, thanks so much, Pat.
So Pat, you and Greg and Amy have all looked at this a little bit, or a lot maybe. Of these modules, which is your favorite and why?
Greg, you want to take that over and I'll rest my voice a bit?
Well, the one that I think probably has most of the impact would probably be Keeper Beef, but the Heifer Hub is one that I think a lot of producers will use, especially moderate to larger herds, just trying to figure out, geez, am I going to have enough heifers 2.5, 3 years down the road, based upon what my breeding decisions are today. And so, and then the heifer hub is so interactive, you can easily change your, if you find out that you're going to be, 20 short, well, then I guess I need to increase my amount of sex semen and drop my beef amount. So I think heifer hub is one that probably have the quickest impact on a lot of other producers. Consultants will like Dairy Depot because of the analysis aspect of it. Larger herds will like that as well. And if you like benchmarking, well, milk metrics.
Amy?
Do you guys see any of these programs taking over pocket dairy in the future?
Cow Compass could very, very easily. Right now, Cow Compass is a lookup only, but we are working towards that as being an input module as well, and going back directly down to DART.
Yeah, great. Any other questions from the audience? If
I
you
haven't
like
heard
to,
haven't heard Pat's answer yet.
So I live fairly close to Madison, so I'm really good at giving political answers, Bruce. What I really like, Bruce, so Cow Compass is a great tool, right? Your cow side, you're here, you're there. As long as you have internet, bang, you're in. You're not playing with an app, and you're not worried about Apple or Android. But what I really like is that speed of interaction, because it's a web-based product. So like Greg said, heifer hub, bang, I can be making adjustments in there just to see what may or may not happen. With Cow Compass, I'm standing next to a cow and the vet says, oh shoot, look at this, and bang, you can look her up and, all right, let's save her or not save her right now. Let's bang, you're right there. You don't have to walk back to the office and gather other information.
Thank you.
one thing I am anticipating here is that a lot of Minnesota DHIA members will get interested in some of these products, and we might need to have very specialized webinars to go through each of these tools down the road. I've already had a few requests of that nature that we've gone through one by one. But what I do want to mention quickly is that we do have some DART support webinars coming up that we're organizing with DRMS. So if you're interested in that, mark your calendars for Friday, March 8th or Wednesday, March 13th. Cass and Gawa will be with us doing some webinars those days. And you can either put something in the chat here if you want to attend, or reach out to me separately and we'll get you enrolled in those webinars too. Okay, I don't see any other questions sitting in the chat. I'd like to move on to our third speaker here then, Katie Schmitt. And Katie is the Outreach Specialist at the Council for Dairy Cattle Breeding based out of Bowie, Maryland. And Katie is coming to us today from Bowie, although she originally hails from Rice, Minnesota, so she knows our Minnesota dairy industry well, and she currently lives in Kansas. Katie, I'd like to turn it over to you. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, and thank you for the introduction, Amy. Like Amy said, I'm Katie Schmitt. I'm the Outreach Specialist for the Council on Dairy Cattle Breeding and a Minnesota native. So it's really fun to be able to be back supporting an organization that I grew up with, that my parents remain involved in. And today we're going to talk about the research and development surrounding genetic evaluations. And in case you're wondering why CDCB is involved in a Minnesota DHIA call and how this all fits together, we're going to cover that first. So really understanding the structure that makes genetic evaluations possible here in the US is kind of step one in understanding the research that's being done around new traits. So I know at first glance, this flowchart can seem a little overwhelming, but hopefully by the second glance, it makes a little bit more sense, and we'll walk through some of the major pieces here. And that starts with how your data that you're collecting from your cows, which is represented by the barn icon, gets into the National Cooperative Database and then returned to you through the use of genetic evaluations. So we've already talked, obviously, Dave gave a great update from National DHIA, and Pat represented the DRPC so well already on this call. So it's great to follow those two gentlemen, because Minnesota DHIA is really going to fall into this top bucket of our, we call collaborating sectors. So the dairy record providers are the group of folks that are out on the farm collecting those milk samples from you all as producers, sending it to the labs and sending that information to the dairy record processing centers like DRMS. The DRPCs are also responsible for assigning that milk data to cow data. So her pedigree, her animal ID, her health events, her reproduction events. All of that information is going to flow together into the National Cooperator Database. And from there, we can make an evaluation off of that. But we need that milk data as the base of our evaluations. That's how all of our models are built, is milk data. The next one on our middle column there is the National Association of Animal Breeders. This would be NAAB. So the folks who are really the umbrella organization for our studs in the US. So they are providing bull information, which is obviously vital in the pedigree components of evaluations. And the fourth one is the Purebred Dairy Cattle Association, or our breed associations. They are the group that, again, is going to be out on farm collecting data. They're getting type information primarily, but also pedigree information from our registered herds. So these four umbrella organizations and entities are really responsible for bringing phenotypic data from farms like yours to the National Cooperator Database, which allows evaluations to be produced. Now, since the onset of genomics, we added a fifth bucket of folks to our collaborators, and those are genomic nominators. These are any organization that sells a genomic service to producers. So some of the most common ones, Zoetis was already mentioned today, but also like Genetic Visions, Neogen, those folks that are selling a genomic test and a genomic evaluation, that information is actually coming to CDCB, and we are the source of that base evaluation because we are the stewards of the National Cooperator Database. This database is the largest of its kind in the world. It's the largest animal genetic information in the world, which is a huge resource and asset to the US evaluation system. So after all this data flows into the database, it comes out in two really major forms, or by two major organizations. The USDA being the first one, and that would be the Animal Genomic and Improvement Laboratory, or AGIL, as I will call them for this call. But they are the primary research arm still today of genetic evaluations. And prior to 2013, they were responsible for everything related to genetic evaluations in the US. Now, in 2013, the USDA said, hey, we want out of the service business. So CDCB entered the picture. We were a committee within the USDA prior to that. But they created a standalone entity to be able to provide independent and pre-competitive services to dairy producers, and really to steward the database, recognizing that our job is to serve dairy producers and to create evaluations and products that are of value to all of you, and that help you have healthier, more productive cows. So the output of all of this, again, is going to be in the form of genomic evaluations on your females at home. And those are going to be seen either from your genomic nominators, or as Pat mentioned, in the HerdHQ platform, it will have a section in there for CDCB genomics as well. But it's also going to be seen in our bull evaluations and bull proofs that come out triannually. And then, of course, like we're going to talk about today, is the research and development side of that, and in trait development, and making sure that we have the proper selection tools available for producers to make informed decisions about their cattle's genetic program. So briefly, before we get to the research, the quick purpose of CDCB, there's a lot up on this screen, but it really boils down to the evaluations. We provide a handful of different types of evaluations. There are weekly, monthly, triennial, interim, or quick turnaround. So a variety of different ways that we can send those evaluations out, but the most commonly known one would be the triennials in April, August, and December. We publish 50 different traits, including 4 selection indexes. Our primary index that folks would be aware of would be net merit. We are the keepers of that formula and the publication of that index. We serve all the dairy breeds here in the US, including crossbreds that started in 2019. And then in addition to the evaluations, we also have this other bucket. So confirming parentage, what the breed percentage is of a crossbred animal, inbreeding, haplotypes, and genetic conditions, which we hear a lot about, and then public resources like Web Connect, the outreach program, and our research arm. So without further ado, our research updates, we're going to start off. There's about 15 to 20 research projects that are ongoing as we speak. So I've selected 5 major ones for the sake of today's call, starting off with ones that are directly tied to milk information. So the first one is milking speed. This is a project that is being led by our partners at USDA Agile. And it's been ongoing for quite some time, but we're really making some exciting progress in the last really year or so. But the data set that we're utilizing for this research is representing about 300 herds, 230,000 cows, 300,000 lactations, 40 million observations. So a really big data set to be able to, the goal is to create a trait that's based on quantitative data coming off of inline software. So other countries that have this selection trait available, it's more qualitative. It's saying, does she milk fast or slow? We want to make sure we have something that is quantitative coming off of the actual equipment software. So in addition to the size of it, the demographics also cover 31 states, more than 6 breeds, and 11 OEMs, or equipment manufacturers, essentially. So as you can imagine, and as you are likely aware, every equipment manufacturer measures these types of things differently. So the start of a milking is at a different point in flow, depending on the equipment that you're using. It measures the end at a certain time. So trying to standardize those variables has been a big part of this project to make sure that the trait we're creating and the data that we're intaking in the future can be standardized in an appropriate way. So when we think about milking speed beyond the equipment, the other factors that we have to consider and variables, I guess, more so, is the breed variety, the frequency of milking, and the days in milk. So what we're seeing here is the plotting of basically a lactation curve for our sample size. So at the bottom, you're going to see the size of the data set by breed. And you can notice that the variability of those data points in the smaller population breeds is a lot larger, which is what we would expect to see. So as that data set gets larger, our lines get a lot tighter, right? So our Holstein and Jersey, obviously having the largest data sets. This does mean that a milking speed trait, as it is developed, will start in our Holstein breed, likely Jersey close behind it. But we do have to grow those data sets in the other breeds before it's a selection trait that can be offered there as well. Now, the next steps for milking speed. The first thing is to actually define the trait. So we call it milking speed for the sake of research, but there is time being spent to determine whether we want to select for milking speed or milking duration. It feels like a minor thing, but really it is a very distinct definition and determination of which way we go with this trait. Beyond that, we are also looking into the correlations of existing traits. So when this project started, there was an understanding that the potentially milking speed would be linked to other udder health traits like somatic cell score. So looking into the correlations of that to make sure that the trait as we develop it is truly its own trait and not just a copy of an existing trait already. So the third thing that will be a part of the next steps for this is the PTAs and heritability. The good news is that preliminarily, what we're seeing is a genetic correlation to net merit of 0.08. And this is actually really good news. It means that basically the traits we are selecting for in net merit are not accounting for what we can select with this new trait. So there's new potential basically to have selection for different traits and more economic traits. The other thing is that the heritability, regardless of whether we end up going milking speed or milking duration, that heritability is in that 3.5 to 5% range, according to, again, preliminary research. So positive as well as we move forward with this trait development. Also related to milk, this is something you're going to actually see very soon, hopefully. We're crossing our fingers. But the standardized lactation yield estimations, what we would know as 305 MEs, and as they're reported in our DHIA reports, when those were last configured was 1994. So the mature equivalent factors, which would be ME, and we corrected the modeling, the equation, for the variety of reasons you can see on the screen here. But in order to get to a 305 ME, it starts with that partial yield that we're collecting through DHIA. Math happens to get to a daily yield, math again to lactation, math again to a 305 ME, so we can standardize that yield. So we're looking at really the math components of this and how do we figure in to get to a standardized lactation. The other thing that we know from research is that genetic selection changes maturity patterns of cows. Because this was last done 30 years ago, it's just kind of time that we take a look at it again to make sure that the methods and the math that we're using are accurate and reflective of today's dairy herd. So what happens when we want to do something like this? Again, this is a project that our colleagues at USDA Agile led us through, or through the database through. We go back to that data set is actually the National Cooperative Database. So this is milk data from all of your farms if you are submitting it for the sake of research purposes. So we have, more than 1 million milk and fat records and 8.1 million protein records. So a massive data set to work with. What remains unchanged in these projection figures is the fact that we are standardizing lactations to a 2x milking and how we account for previous days open. So those two things from the 1994 equation are going to stay the same. What we're going to improve or change is how we account for the season region factors and how we adjust for age and parity, so age and lactation. When it comes to season region, we are shifting from 3 geographical regions that were more or less arbitrary to 5 new climate regions that are based off of energy code from the government. So this is how we will now factor in the climate that the cows are in when we figure out what that standardized lactation yield looks like. And in, I guess, a more applied way, what that can show us, or what we can see, the square that's lit up here is actually Minnesota. So that would be region 5 for milk. And the red line that's depicted here is the lactation, I guess, curve, if you will, of 1990, but over the months of the year. So we're going to see those spikes and dips depending on the heat and the cold that we're so familiar with in Minnesota. But what we can see is that in 2015, that variation in those peaks and valleys is actually decreased. And what that tells us is that today we are doing a better job of providing cow comfort and cow care and mitigating the impacts of the environment that our cows are living in. So this is actually really good news for a cow management component of this story. So I have to say kudos to our dairy producers in those cold regions, but also across the US. When it comes to age, so the breed components, it's when the researchers talk about this, it's a similar graph to the last one, but it's broke apart by breeds. But I think the other thing to note in the most major part of this change is we will be essentially removing 305 MEs, so mature equivalents, and shifting to a 305 AA, or average age. And that means that all of these standardized lactations will be adjusted to a 36-month time or 36-month age. So previously an ME varied depending on the breed of cow, And what we are learning is that the mature equivalents that were utilized, those cows weren't ever really reaching that age. So it's anywhere from 61 to 86 months of age was considered the mature equivalent, depending on the breed. So what we know in the industry to be true is that the average age of cows is 36 months. So it is more applicable to average lactation yield that we're using to compare across our herds and across our cows to an age that those cows are reaching. So that is how we landed on 36 months for a 305 AA moving forward. This is potentially, this will be launched in 2024. It's potentially coming this spring still. We are in the final stages of testing this to make sure that it's going to come out with accurate results and results that we understand, and no surprises is usually the goal. So we're looking forward to making this officially official for April soon, but certainly in 2024. Now, the second part of this project, or in addition to this project, is what we call the lactation factors. This is an initiative that is being undertaken by CDCB, National DHIA, and USDA Agile. And essentially, we're looking at the formula for projecting a lactation curve, whether it's milk, fat, or protein, or other pieces in the future potentially as well. So basically, it's the math that gets us from partial yields to lactation yields. So what that means is that we are doing some very extensive milk sampling of cows weekly, actually, at farms. So every week, we are sampling all milkings in a day at these research sites. And then after we finish weekly sampling, then we shift to a monthly sampling for a few more months as well. So we began sampling in 2023. We have finished Farm 1. They are finishing up monthly sampling in April, but the really intense stuff is done. And we have almost 75,000 milk samples from this herd throughout this research project, which includes weekly and monthly sampling. But alongside the milk sampling, we're also collecting TMR samples to match up what the cows are eating to what's being produced in the milk. And it's not only traditional sampling or lab results that we're looking at, but also near infrared sampling or spectral data to see what else we can learn with that technology. So mentioned Farm 1 is complete on the weeklies. We are moving into finishing up monthlies there. We are preparing to start 2 more herds in California and New York. The first herd was Holsteins. These next 2 will be Jerseys. And we will continue to recruit herds across the US and in those breeds. For the near future, we anticipate or are targeting spring of 26 to have sampling complete, recognizing that that is a target date and not something that we can officially commit to today, but we are working towards that goal. Preliminary findings related to the fatty acids are being submitted to ADSA for presentation in June. So assuming those are published, we will have our first initial published results from this project in June. But it is being set up to be really a really exciting milk database and data set for us to use for future research projects, and it would not be possible without our collaboration with National DHIA and USDA. Also related to large collaborations, I was happy to hear Dave mention collaboration as a part of National DHIA because that is what this is. So the Greener Cattle Initiative is a project that CDCB is a founding member of alongside National DHIA and the others on the screen here. But for those of you who are not familiar with the Greener Cattle Initiative, essentially it is a collaboration or a consortium that is working to reduce enteric methane emission from dairy and beef cattle to slow the effects of climate change. So this is a large national effort, and GCI has been awarding various research projects throughout the last year. And one of the ones is up at UW-Madison, or over, I guess, for you all. And then this is a project that CDCB is subsidizing with additional research funds as well. But we are working to basically figure out how selective breeding can mitigate methane emission. But the project goes beyond that to also include milk mid-infrared spectra, so mirror data, just like the Factors project, and then also rumen microbe. So we are working at 5 different research institutions for this project. It's the same 5 that would have been utilized for feed saved and feed efficiency as well. So it's almost a continuation of that project, but it certainly is its own project in and of itself. So again, this is being led by Francisco at University of Wisconsin-Madison. Recognize that there are those 3 components of this project. The big one here for CDCB is the selective breeding component. What recent studies have shown is that methane traits are heritable, which is great news for a selective breeding program. And because we have genomics, we're able to essentially create a reference population of cattle who are genotyped and phenotyped and be able to predict for the greater population of our U.S. dairy herd without having to phenotype everything. One of the next steps for this one as well, like milking speed, is trait definition. So figure out how we're going to measure what that trait looks like for selective breeding. But wanted to make sure I recognize that of this GCI project, there are, again, those 3 big picture outcomes from this specific project funded by the Greener Cattle Initiative. CDCB is invested in the genomic solutions component, but there's also the milk spectra data, as well as, again, the rumen microbes. The 5th one on the 5 that I picked out for today's call is the mobility and hoof health. And I believe Dr. Kramer will be talking with this group in a couple of weeks. So I just wanted to more or less mention that this is a big undertaking by CDCB as well, in partnership with the University of Minnesota, to use Cattle Eye data, which is a camera software system, to develop a selection trait for mobility and hoof health. So we have data coming in from 4 herds across the Midwest and into the West. And currently the process is at the data wrangling and cleaning step of this research. And we are currently actually hiring a support scientist to work on this project specifically to make sure that we're moving it forward at an appropriate rate. Like I mentioned, there's about 20 projects that are ongoing. So just some additional projects I wanted to list up here to more or less demonstrate that CDCB is invested in a lot of different places to make sure that we are using your milk data in a way that provides economic traits or traits of economic importance in the future. And we are really working towards value add for producers as we steward your milk data in the National Cooperative Database. So just calling attention briefly to the reproductive performance evaluation review. This is essentially working to understand how current on-farm practices are impacting performance evaluations, recognizing that today's methods for reproductive programs looks different than it did when these traits first came out. So understanding how these different variables impact those traits. And then also heat stress is one that's just starting out now, and working with the University of Connecticut and USDA on that. And that is utilizing data directly from the National Cooperative Database. So I would be remiss if I don't say, thank you. Also, if you want to learn more, my contact info is on the screen. But it is truly the value and the power of your milk data that is allowing us to do this type of research to provide you all with selection traits for your genetic programs in a pre-competitive and independent way that is not connected to proprietary information. So we are very grateful for that. And I see a chat button. Amy, are there questions in there that I need to respond to?
Thanks, Katie. No, if you could just take Ellen's question here. She says, thank you for the great presentation. And do you think milking speed will be added to net merit dollars in the future, or any of the other indexes for that matter?
Yes, that's a great question, Ellen. The intention certainly is that milking speed will be added to a future net merit index revision. We're targeting a 2025 net merit revision. Whether milking speed will be at a place where it can be included in that revision is yet to be seen, but the intention is that we believe milking speed is a trait of economic significance, therefore it would be included in net merit. Indexes beyond CDCB, it would be up to those organizations to determine whether they would like to include it, but we certainly are hopeful that they will find value in that trait as well.
Great, thank you, Katie. Thanks, Ellen, for the question. Are there any other questions from the audience? Don't forget to unmute yourself if you need to ask a question. We can't
I was
hear.
just asking Katie where she got that cool sweatshirt in the picture.
Yeah, it's weird what happens when you work with DHIA at home. So I've had that picture in my phone, and I thought, what a great way to end my presentation for you all. That is our herd of cows at home in Minnesota that are proudly tested by Bruce once a month using Minnesota DHIA.
Not personally, let's clarify that.
Yeah, not you, Bruce. Sorry.
Any other questions out there in mind? And with that, I will close our call today. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great day.